Butterflies don't decide that they don't wanna fly no more. And lions never say that they don't wanna roar. So why do we deny our own light inside? Baby, we were made from stardust, so shine.
Peace and blessings, family, and welcome to Labors of Love podcast. We are here to inspire, uplift, and enlighten. Each episode, we will be hearing from Black midwives, doulas, and other traditional childbirth supporters who have dedicated their lives to being of service to Black mothers and families in all aspects of the motherhood journey. This evening, I have the privilege of speaking with Tia Ajao, a DC-born, Baltimore-raised child of immigrant parents from Nigeria, West Africa. She obtained her Master's of Public Health degree in Maternal and Child Health in 2008, and later chose to pursue a career as a nurse and a doula. Due to her own experience as a mother of two and as a birth advocate in her community. After experiencing her own trauma as a Black nurse, constantly witnessing the Black maternal health crisis right before her eyes, Tia embraced healing and a career transformation by serving as a birth nurse for community birth. Her role in supporting certified nurse midwives at home births and birth centers soon inspired her to pursue the midwife role herself. Tia is co-owner of Hello Baby events, where she and her spouse focus on education for the whole village, advocacy for community doulas, and empowerment for rising Black midwives. Tia is proud to impact the next generation of nurses as an adjunct clinical instructor for maternal newborn nursing. She is also a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated and is honored to serve as chair of the Stork's Nest Prenatal Care Education Program for her chapter. It is such an honor to have you with us this evening. Welcome. I'm excited to jump into this conversation and just sharing of your journey as to how we got to here. You have so many things that you have going on and that you've accomplished within your professional career. So what was your childhood like? Like, what were the messages that you received around pregnancy, labor, and delivery prior to coming into this awareness that you have now?
Well, thank you so much. It's such a great place to get started. I was actually raised in Baltimore, Maryland, born in DC at Howard University Hospital. But I was born to immigrant parents. They were from Nigeria, West Africa. And so I had a full African name, Taiwo I Adeloye, which I use as my initials now, Tia.
Okay.
But I was actually raised by my mom, who is a pediatrician, and my dad, who was an architect. And at the age of 5, I got a gift for Christmas from them, and it was a doll that was shaped like a brand newborn baby. So it wasn't a regular baby doll. It was like the thing you get on the you call into the company and they send it to you. So I knew it was a special gift. But it was a little baby doll curled up with a little band on the arm, and and I knew it was a special gift. And not far from then, my mom asked me, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And that small gift gave me that impression. And I'm like, I want to be able to take care of little itty bitty babies. I want to take care of babies. And I asked her, what is the person who takes care of babies? And she says, well, a labor nurse takes care of babies, but you don't want to be a nurse. You want to be a doctor.
Okay.
So that was a message I got as a child. And of course, she was already a pediatrician. So I grew up into the thought that I wanted to get into the medical field. And of course, she's already told me there's only one way to go, become a medical doctor. And that's what I attempted to do. And that pathway didn't open up for me. I started medical school. Unfortunately, I had my own health challenges as a young adult, and I had a really hard time when it came to medical school. But I did get into an MD MPH program, and even though I didn't complete the MD part, I completed the public health part, which was in maternal and child health.
Okay.
And so I think that whole time and season just kind of kept me very live when it came to the thought of physicians and the different roles that people play. And when it came to becoming a mom myself, I think my high regard of clinicians, of doctors in particular, was a huge role in what happened in my birth experience, because it's always like, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor, you know it all, doctor.
Mhm.
um, and so that also led to kind of how my birth experience also played out.
Okay. So before we go into your birth experience, because I'm definitely interested in birth stories, um, what did you see a lot of pregnant women growing up? Were you around babies? Did you get that opportunity after you found out that you had this, drive to be around babies and care for babies? Were you able to be exposed directly, caring for other children or things of that nature?
Actually, no, not
Okay.
so much growing up, interestingly enough.
Hmm.
I always knew that mom was taking care of children and mostly babies, but she was very she didn't bring it home. She didn't
Okay.
bring work home. And so I just kind of grew up knowing that this is a hardworking person that's doing
Mhm.
all the things for all the people, but never really quite had exposure. I was the youngest of my family, so
Oh,
I never really had exposure to many young children, and not many pregnant people. And
okay.
that's an interesting thought, because the first time I got exposed to like labor and birth was as a college student
Okay.
volunteering at a hospital. And at the
Mm,
time, I volunteered at a hospital. I think I was in my junior year in college.
okay.
And I was on labor and delivery. And I did different things, like mostly administrative things. And I actually attended one or two births. It didn't phase me.
Mhm.
It was not so engaging for me, interestingly. But that was a season in which I volunteered, and then I actually discovered a prenatal care education program called the Stork's Nest at that
Mm,
hospital. And
okay.
then that's what drew me in,
Okay.
because all of a sudden I saw the importance of education for the prenatal client. And I could see this particular program was run by Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated and the March of Dimes. And it was a merger to provide education to prenatal clients and also give them an incentive for carrying out those health behavior changes in their lives. So I became extremely engrossed into this program,
Mhm.
because I began to see prevention in healthcare. I began to see what it could look like if a family became prepared
Mhm.
early in their pregnancy and carried that out throughout their experience. So it was very weird, because I was a pre-medicine student and a volunteer, but I was more interested in this education program than I was in L&D. And in fact, none of the births really phased me. It never really did that thing to me
Mhm. Mhm.
to experience those births. So it was very interesting. But that prenatal care program literally led me to my sorority, led me into maternal child health as a career, and really is 20 years plus now for me in a program that's really made an impact, especially for Black moms in
Oof.
our community. So
Wow.
that was probably the first true falling in love season for me.
Oh, wow. And that is a beautiful, beautiful story. And I think a segue into just the other part of the conversation, because that education piece is so important and so impactful, especially when we're talking about moving the needle or changing, the disparities that are constantly bombarding us about, Black women birthing, and for this program to be 20 plus years. for me, I find that was the model that helped me feel empowered to have the births that I did. It was that education piece, because prior to becoming pregnant, like most people growing up, I wasn't around pregnant women. I didn't have midwives in my family. I didn't have anyone who was normalizing the conversation around, birth and pregnancy and what to expect. It was kind of like, you find out you're pregnant, you go to your OB, you go to the hospital, you had a baby, you come home. And like, that was it. There was no detail. There was no ritual. There was no, change this, do that. So that education piece is so important. So I definitely would love to hear, your birth story and more about that, because I found that the understanding was empowering and that allowed me to make better choices.
Absolutely. And it was interesting. As I shared, I was raised by a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and my spouse is a doctor who was also raised by a doctor. So we both had this complex where we just believed that the power is in the hand of the doctor.
Okay.
So we had a very beautiful pregnancy with our first baby. I mean, everything was extremely perfect. I
Okay.
mean, like everything. I mean, it was such a beautiful pregnancy. And when the time came, we were 39 plus weeks,
Okay.
contractions started like should happen, right?
Mm.
But we didn't take any class, right? We didn't take any class. We didn't prepare because, oh, we know it all. Oh, I got this public health degree. Oh, I'm a doctor. I
Okay.
know it all. And we didn't do any of that because in our minds, we've done that. He's
Mm.
delivered babies in this past. So
Mm.
it was us coming in thinking that we were ready, and we
Mm.
really were not. And so the course of things is just very similar to a lot of moms today. Black moms, every
Mhm.
mom who's not coming in unprepared. You
Yes.
find out that you are at the mercy of the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, you're at the mercy of whoever's going to tell you what you're going to do, and that was me.
Okay.
And it was, although the labor, everything was happening perfectly for me. I got that epidural nice and early so I could end
Okay.
that situation so I could rest. Next thing you know, they come in the room like, oh, baby's in distress. We need a C-section. I'm like, what?
Wow. Okay.
My brain was exploded because
Yeah.
I'm like, everything has been perfect. What?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
guess what? Rolled us into that OR and had that C-section.
Okay.
And it was a true disconnect from birth with my first
Mm.
baby. I heard him cry, but I didn't have the opportunity to see him, which felt like eternity. And I know that that's very minor compared to what some other birthing people have experienced in their experience. But it may have been just 30 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. And I
Mm.
felt extremely alone. And I
Mm.
felt disconnected from the baby I birthed. And the moment in which they put him in my arms, I was so loopy and out of it
Oh,
from all of the medications and things. I could have dropped him.
wow.
The nurse, of course, the nurse comes in and they go, oh, your baby, here's your baby. Put him
Mm.
in your arms. If that lady let him go, he would have fallen to the ground. So that complex unfortunately kind of continued on through the early parts of motherhood. I mean, he came home on Christmas Day. I was surrounded by loved ones and family. I had so much love around me, but that did not change the disconnect.
Mm.
And I spiraled into a very tremendous perinatal mood and anxiety disorder that nearly took my life.
Ooh.
He was about 10 months old when that had happened. And it was so tremendous that I lost my job.
Mm.
I had to be in the hospital for a long period of time to recover. And
Wow.
so, but I will say that it was the most transformative experience because here I was without a job, and now I was a stay-at-home mom by force, but which forced me to reconnect, to make that connection that I didn't have prior to for my son when he was born. And then next thing you know, surprise, here's number two coming through with
Wow.
with no job, on WIC, on Medicaid, on every public service you can think of.
Mm.
And so next thing you know, I had these two beautiful children, and I was now my own client. I was a client who had been serving all those years with the stork's nest. All of a sudden, I
Mm.
was the mom who was at risk, who didn't have access to the services she needed for herself and her baby. And now it became like, whoa, I can't even get a job because when I was super huge with my baby, no one was going to hire me. So
Right.
I was literally at home for about 2 years. Now the turning point for me happened when my second baby was about 1 years old, almost one, and a loved one was pregnant in my family. She was pregnant, and she invited me to join her for her birth.
Mm.
And so I was a designated driver. I took her and her husband to the hospital on that day. And this was the first time anyone had ever invited me from my family to be a
Yes.
part of birth. And so they decided to choose the physiologic birth process, but they too didn't prepare for that either. So
Mm.
we all were pretty much there praying, trying to pray away the contractions and the pain and the discomfort. And I remember just being there wondering all the things that I know as being a mom already and being a public health person. I have no tools to support these folks. What is
Mm.
going on? I'm a mom. I thought I knew it all, right? But I didn't know it all. But I could see for the first time what I could have been doing if I had the training.
Wow.
And once that baby was birthed, and even watching the baby birthed was another whole. It blew my mind like I've never seen this before because
Yes.
nothing like my births.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, Father God, if ever I have the opportunity to stand in this space ever again, I want the tools and
Mm.
every enablement to be able to support the birthing person in this space. And
Wow.
that was my turning point. And
Whew.
and I found out about the doula role, but I didn't quite know how to go about it. But I
Okay.
found one doula program,
Mm.
and that doula program was within a school of nursing.
Mm.
So I would go to the school of nursing just to try to figure out how to get into that doula program without becoming a nurse.
Okay.
But that's how it happened. I kept on going back and asking questions and trying to figure out, well, how do I become a doula? Okay, I have to become a nurse. Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Oh my
That's how it
God.
happened. So I ended up
Wow.
going on full scholarship to the Hopkins School of Nursing, and I became a birth companions doula, graduated after 17 months as a nurse and a doula, and jumped right into the field in a way that I think has really made things to keep going.
That is phenomenal and such an amazing story because you know, things that we don't normalize when we tell birth stories, a lot of times we focus more on the happier moments or like what we think people are used to hearing, like in the baby. But what we don't talk about is the challenging aspect of it, especially if you feel unsupported or if you feel like, like what you spoke of in your situation where that disconnect happened and, it was challenging and just how overwhelming this new role can be. And it's a lot. So, from that experience, how has that helped you in assisting mothers and preparing families for this significant transition? Was there a difference between your first child and your second child, just dealing with the transition? How was that for you?
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. Absolutely. I mean, the first experience definitely helped to give me more advocacy for my own self. For my
Mhm.
second experience, for other families now, I call myself a convert. Because currently, I'm what they call most people call us a birth assistant or a midwife assistant. I like to call myself a birth nurse
Okay.
because I get to actually experience physiologic birth with families,
Mhm.
and so because mine was so different, both of mine ended up being C-sections. Because the second time, the doctor's like, "Oh, I guess we're just going to do another C-section."
Right,
Okay,
right.
doctor.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So we had those two. And I also my family is, hey, I'm a convert. I've become a believer in this process, through this experience. And I definitely do draw on my experiences, especially with the mental health and wellness piece, especially with what can we do in preparation for this birth so that we don't spiral down into the situation where like now you're at the mercy of the clinician to make those decisions for you.
Right.
What can we do ahead of time to ensure that we are prepared? And I think it's interested me in 2018,
Mhm.
both my husband and I trained to become Lama certified childbirth educators and doulas. So we both, that was a transformative time for us because it allows us to look back to our experiences
Mhm.
and draw from it so that we are able to empower other families. And I say all the time to my clients that I like to be very top heavy because as a public health professional, it's better to focus on prevention than trying to deal with an outcome that we could have just prevented from the get-go. So
Right.
the earlier we can get with families to get them prepared for their birth experience, the better.
Mhm.
But guess what? It's not just mom and dad, right? Because
Right.
grandma, aunt, uncle, cousin,
Yeah.
grandpapa, everybody's going to chime in. So when we started our effort together, we started in baby showers, actually. We
Okay.
started to educate families with proper childbirth concepts
Excellent.
in the baby shower opportunity where everybody is engaged
Together. Oh
and
yeah.
present. And so we since the pandemic, we haven't jumped back in so much as before, but the goal is to really empower and educate the whole village because once, like for example, I've worked in perinatal nursing for the past 8 years. I've done labor and delivery, I've done postpartum, I've done a little bit of nursery and things like that. We do a little bit of education, then we say goodbye, you can go home, bye bye. But when you focus on community health, and which is our focus now, you're able to bring the whole village together
Oh, oh,
to
yes.
ensure that you're doing whatever you can to equip those village people because those are the people that matter, not the nurses and not the doctors at this point.
Oh, and that is just such a powerful statement because, one of the questions I ask parents and when we're talking about birth stories is like the pushback. Did you, especially if you're choosing alternative methods in birthing or breastfeeding or what have you, that it's not necessarily alternative because that's really like the original indigenous way in which we birth. But now that, we are in Western medicine, related society, some of those concepts seem more foreign. And a lot of times the pushback comes from those who are closest to you. Like your mom is like, oh my gosh, you want to do what at home?
Exactly. That's
you don't want to, these bottles, you don't have to go through all of that. So like you're saying
that's
that
right.
it is the community, it is the village. If we are all on board, if we all have this information that we're pulling from and as the parents who are making the decisions, we feel empowered and supported, that's a whole different experience.
Absolutely. And you know what I've been telling a lot of families these days as well, especially when it comes to having birth in the community, either at home, at the birth center, that is the activism that
Mm,
we need to create in our communities, especially for Black people. Because what we're doing, what we're telling the medical complex is that no, I'm taking control of my birth. And I'm going to do it in such a way that I am upholding my safety. I am
mhm.
upholding my well being, but I'm also bringing it uh, into full ownership of myself. And the more families who are doing this at whatever level, the better. We call ourselves Hello Baby events
Okay.
because I come from a culture that loves to celebrate. We love to plan an event. So, if I'm planning a wedding, I got a wedding planner on point, right? I got a huge venue. I got
Mhm,
somebody who's doing the core for the event. There's somebody on the cake, on the
mhm.
catering. Somebody got my shoes taken care of. I got a tailor. I got a hairdresser. So there's so many people and factors that it comes to actually planning an event.
Mhm.
So imagine planning for your next of kin, your legacy, the next person coming into your home and into your village. And so how do we take that whole event and plan it so on D-Day you guys are shining? That makes sense, because if you're on the childbirth education, when you got your lactation education done nice and early so you understand the process, and you take ownership of your birth, no matter what setting that you desire, you choose the venue, right? So at the end of the day, this is an event that's going to change your life. You should be in full ownership of it, and you should be allowed to shine. And that's really what we're working to do in our community health efforts right now.
That is so powerful. And I truly appreciate that. So, one of the things that you mentioned is that there was some impact by COVID as far as in person events. Are there any opportunities for that to be virtual, or is there a rollout about how that's going to continue moving forward?
Thank you for that. Well, I'm hoping we're starting to get excited this summer because people are starting to get out
Good.
and be more healthy and have less exposure and less morbidity, I guess, with the pandemic. But um, I think nowadays we have definitely been focused on each family at a time.
Okay.
Just like you kind of said, like these individual villages, for example, as a birth nurse, I had the privilege of actually getting to know my clients before their birth, as opposed to a labor and delivery nurse where it's like, hey, I'm Tia, I'm your nurse today, and then I'm this person that's going to experience this transformative experience with you, and you meeting me for the
Just met.
first time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So where I serve right now, I serve with the midwives at Birth Care and Women's Health. They have established themselves in such a way that they would like their birth assistants, or as I say, birth nurse, to get to know the client ahead of the birth, and that gives us the opportunity to begin to discuss. What are your plans? What are you guys doing? Is it Bradley you guys are doing? Is it
Okay.
evidence-based birth, Lamaze, or what is it you guys are doing? How can I support you in the process of your learning? Who is your doula? What? You don't have a doula? Well, let's rethink this. Let's
Right.
rethink
Right.
this.
Here's a list. Like,
Let's rethink this. You've never done this before, so you might not understand what the doula is there for, but really,
yeah.
they're the second most important person in the room.
Yes.
So helping families to kind of wrap their minds around those kind of things, what it really means to be ready. And one of the most fun part is, if it's a home birth, I get to go to their home and help set up the home for their home birth, and that can be really I really find joy in that. Especially watching the intentionality of families as they prepare. So it's something that we don't get to do in the hospital. We don't get to meet folks ahead of time. It's really when we show up on our shift and we say hello. That's the first time. There's no place for prevention, and so I shine so much better in community health right now because of that prevention part.
Wow. And that again is just this is so powerful, and it's a consistent message of the importance of preparation. Like this is such a significant process to beforehand. And like you said, just the difference in what that experience is like. Because I can only imagine. I feel like my birth team is family, right? Because we've been in some intimate spaces together a few times. So I love them. But like you said, to just meet somebody the day of, it's like, and we're used to that, right? Like for you to be like, how I'll be your labor and delivery nurse. We're used to that. That makes sense. Okay. I trust that process. But like you were saying, if we have these relationships that we built up beforehand, when we're in this crunch of those intensities of this process that we're going through in our body, and you look up and you see a familiar face that you trust, or you hear that voice telling you, breathe through it, or what have you, it's a different energy in the space when I have my team with me in this process. So I just find it, very impactful, what you all are doing and how you all are setting up. And, I absolutely love birth care and women's health. So just to see how dynamic, what it is that you're bringing into this already phenomenal institution is just like, just the continuous, and I forward think to how impactful this is going to be for families as they're coming. And it's amazing the work that you all are doing and what you from your own experiences are bringing into this space. So what are the things, if people are listening and they might not be pregnant just yet, but they are considering and they want to kind of get their ducks in a row, what are some of the things that you all may offer, and is there anything that you all offer virtually if someone is not in the DMV area?
Absolutely. We we're focused a lot on education. We teach Lamaze, which is actually a very much wider type of child birth ed these days than breastfeeding. We really believe in preparation, and we've definitely sat down with couples who are either planning to be pregnant or early in their pregnancy and trying to make decisions, because the first decision you need to make is who you're going to have it, who's going to be your MC, who's
Right.
going to actually be the person who's going to be in charge of your event.
Mhm.
Who's that clinician? Is it going to be an OB for one or two reasons? Is it going to be a midwife? Who is that going to be? And sometimes people literally just pick up their insurance card and they're like, oh,
Mhm.
eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So we need
Yes.
to cut that. We need to
Yes.
cut that 100%. Cut that card off if you need to. But for
Ooh.
real, because somehow they need to figure out, how do I get to step one, you know, and what knowledge do I need to get to step one? So we are those people who are able to say, hey, these are the folks that are making it happen in the community. These are great options. And hey, before you even make a step towards calling your insurance about it, talk about the options that are available to you in
Oh,
preconception care, and very early in the pregnancy, because that's going to kind of really show how the rest of the prenatal care is going to look like. So we love doing that preconception kind of talking. And if we're talking to someone who's not in town, we have friends, right? We have
okay.
friends
Yeah.
who are
Yeah.
doing great work in other states and in other parts of the country and beyond. So that in that preliminary conversation needs to be happening for every family,
Oh, yes.
honestly. And then from then on, of course, we have Lamaze. We love evidence-based birth. I'm an evidence-based birth instructor, so we definitely promote that education, because it's especially helpful for people working to have their birth in the medical complex. It really does have a very in-depth training for those families in preparation for their own self-advocacy. Then
Okay.
we like to really focus on lactation education
Okay.
prenatally, because if a mom can really get their mind and understand the process in prenatal, then we're not struggling with the brand new baby trying to teach you this stuff for
Mhm.
the first
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
that was the biggest struggle I had as a nurse at the bedside. Trying to figure out how to teach them
Right.
in the moment is
Oh,
very, very difficult,
yeah.
right? I'm an IBCLC as well, so that part is nice to see them on the front end and then also on the back end. And our dad chat. So that Dr. Ajao, he is a medical doctor trained in West Africa, but here he's more about his communication background.
Okay.
But he does do a dad chat from the doula dad doctor perspective.
That is phenomenal.
We're
And
just
just that
it's
is amazing. And there's a few things that you said, especially in reference to vetting your care providers, and knowing kind of what their background is, because that whole eeny, meeny, miny, mo thing can get you in some trouble. Because what
yeah.
if they have a high cesarean rate? What if they got complaints or what? Like there's a lot of benefit in having a referral.
Right.
Like that word of mouth is important with every choices that we make. If we buying a car or a house or these other things, we look for word of mouth. We want to ask people, well, what was your experience? So I think that is great advice, looking into your team. But the perspective of the dad, I am
Mhm.
learning that is a whole different energy, and it's phenomenal because there's so much a part of the experience, even though physiologically it's not
Mhm.
directly happening to them. and just their viewpoint and our need for their support and just their perspective of how they're internalizing all this going on. I find that to have that male perspective adds such value and richness to the conversation. So what you and your husband are doing, it definitely feels like the complete package, because like you said, the whole family and the whole village is getting the information that they need to create this event. You're absolutely right. The planning, like to execute this flawlessly. Let's bring it all together. Wow.
And I think a lot of us are attracted to that idea of having an event like your 25th birthday. You're planning, you got your dress set up, but if we can help families take their birth to that level,
Yes.
it's exciting. I feel like when you have ownership of your birth, it's so exciting being able to have control over making those plans. And I think that's also strategic with birth care, giving them the option of choosing their birth assistant and hopefully even their backup is empowering, because a lot of things are not under their control
Right, right,
as they plan for their birth. We know things can go seamlessly, and we know some things can change.
right.
And so being able to make those decisions and have some ownership is very empowering, I think, for family. And I'm at all and very grateful for being able to be a part of that process.
Yes, 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 yes. So that is amazing. We could talk about birth all day. This is just, I just find it fascinating, and I appreciate when I connect with people who are really, genuinely and sincerely passionate about the work and the families that they're assisting. And again, I just love birth care and women's health. So I'm grateful that you were able to take some time today to just really, share your story. I think it's an amazing and powerful story, and just to see how you've turned your experiences into, education and support for other people. It's just, that's phenomenal to me. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to share. And I want to make sure that if people want to get in contact with you, I'm definitely going to put your links in the description. But if you have anything that you want to let people know about as far as, opportunities or events or anything that you have, please feel free to share that with the audience.
Absolutely. I'm an advocate now for home birth and birth center birth. I mean, I know that options are not as much available to families, especially for families who want an all black birth team. It's not always an easy thing,
Yeah.
but we do definitely like to have those conversations with families nice and early. If you're thinking about home birth, doesn't matter where, at least we can give you some insight as to some steps you can take. We're at Hello Baby Events on Instagram. Our website is hellobabyevents.com. Let's see. And I think our email is info@hellobabyevents.com. Feel free to reach out. We like to help give that guidance, especially that preliminary guidance, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of your experience. And I just want to mention too, another thing we come in contact to is the family who says, "Oh, the such and such hospital is 2 minutes from my house. I guess I have to pick that as my venue." So again, we want to help you. We want to help you to be more liberal and to open up your mind a little bit bigger to you and going back to your dreams, because we also don't like the situation where you're at a hospital and you're asking them about a water birth. Those very much don't happen
Mm-hmm.
in most parts of this country. So you want to be able to know what your options are. You want to look at your dreams and what you would like to see happen for the birth of your legacy, and then begin to have a conversation. It could be us or other doulas in your community. Doulas are very great at knowing what's what in the community. So we just want you to help get you on the right start. Want to get you on the right foot and prepare you for an empowered birth. Where you have ownership
Mm-hmm.
of your experience.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we will definitely have all of those links in the description, so you can just click on Hello Baby Events and get right to the information and be able to connect. And again, you don't know what you don't know, so reach out, because there's just a wealth of information that's available to you. And what you all are doing, Nurse Tia, is amazing. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, grateful for this platform. Please, those who are listening, share, because you don't know who needs to hear this conversation, but it has definitely been valuable and impactful for me. So we want to continue the conversation with everyone. So thank you all for tuning in, and we appreciate you. Peace and blessings.
Thank you.